Hey, so before we get started, here's the
Whoa,
thing.
whoa, 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 whoa. Where's the obnoxious, singing in the beginning of the episode?
So I knew that you were gonna call me out on that, and that's what I was gonna point out. Here's the thing. I love this record way too much to just go ahead and butcher any song on it. So I'm going to save your ears for today, and my
Don't
vocal
let
cords.
me hear you say life's taking you nowhere. I just
Thank you so much for filling in for me today.
Run for the shadows.
Run for the shadows, 'cause these
in these
golden years.
golden
Okay, so
years.
I guess I did sing.
All right, there you go.
There you go. That was Golden Years, by the way. Track 2 off this. You have no idea how excited I am today. So, if you can't tell, listeners, album number 10. For us, it's 9 because we did not cover pinups. This is my favorite David Bowie record, Station to Station. Since I have been a fan of this man, this has always been my favorite David Bowie album. And even through this journey of this man's discography, I don't see that changing. I can't wait.
Can I ask you something?
Go for it.
I want to pose something that you posed to me on the Diamond Dogs episode. I'm curious as to how this became your favorite album, and maybe a very brief anecdote about how you first discovered the album.
Yeah, so I think I talked about this. I don't remember what episode, but I know I've talked about how The Next Day was my soundtrack for that year came out, and same thing with Black Star when that came out in 2016. And I think when we get into an artist, the record that comes out after you get into said artist, you hold really close to, right? Mm-hmm. Hence why I have a huge love for The Next Day and Black Star. Obviously, that doesn't apply to Station because that came out 1976. The reason why I think this was the one that just really did it for me was because this was around the same time that I was getting into music that is very similar to this record. So I was getting into a lot of krautrock, which you introduced me to. Interesting
All credit
enough.
for that goes to my friend Sebastian, by the way. Thank you, Sebastian, wherever you are.
Shout out to Sebastian. You got me into krautrock, but it wasn't really till a few years later. I want to say 2013. Actually, yeah, 2012, 2013 was when I really got into it. Right around the same time when my Bowie love really just skyrocketed again, right around when The Next Day came out. So I think because I was getting into the style of music that was heavily influenced on this record, I just fell in love with this one right away. And then reading, he was listening to Tangerine Dream and Kraftwerk and Can, et cetera, et cetera. This was just the one. I mean, I know it's probably not the answer we were looking for, and I'm sorry it wasn't, the most elaborate answer. There wasn't really a personal reason why I connected with this record. This has just always been the one for me. I'll go ahead and say already, there are very few albums, and yes, there are only 6 songs on this album. But in my opinion, those 6 songs are pretty much flawless. And I think that's a rare thing. It's a rare thing. Because I even think of some of my other favorite albums, I can identify flaws with them, right? I really, and it's I'm totally being biased, but I don't really think there's any flaws in this record. The only
this would be
flaw,
a very, very interesting episode then.
the only flaw I'll point out is maybe the production of the original version. I'll just go ahead and say already, I would recommend listening to the Harry Maslin remixed version of this record. I forget when it came out originally. But it's on the Who Can I Be Now box set, which has this record, Diamond Dogs, Young Americans, The Gouster, as well as the Maslin remixed version. I think that's the superior version of this album. I can remember thinking as far back when I first fell in love with this album that even back then that was my only critique of it. It's like like this one just doesn't sound like as good as like Low or Loud Insane or other records. It just didn't sound as crisp to me. But I think the Maslin remix version fixed that for sure.
Cool.
Hey, by the way, my name's Andy and my co-host is Bobby.
Yeah, by the way, hello everybody.
Hello everybody.
We just got into it, and that's fine. I think we should just dive into the record, but before we do that, I have one thing I just want to say very quickly. This segment is called Rob Did His Homework. And yes, I finally listened to some of the things you asked me to listen to. So the first thing, I feel like a dum-dum because you have recommended the reality version of Rebel Rebel to me for ages, and I did listen to it, and I forgot that I had the DVD companion to that live album. So I've heard that version before. I was like, boy, this sounds familiar. So yeah, you were totally right. It was a really good version of Rebel Rebel. I made the comment, I think in the Diamond Dogs, something like that. Yeah, I think it must have been the Diamond Dogs episode that there was no live version of that song that I like. That's not true. The reality version, as you pointed out, was definitely awesome. And the other thing that I heard,
it's
I
great.
watched the video of,
it starts out a little differently.
This is sorry?
No, go ahead.
The other thing that I listened to, or rather watched, was that cover that Beck did of Sound and Vision, which I should have talked about this in the next episode when we do Low, but I think anyway, I watched it, and yeah, it was awesome. He did a really good job, and the amount of musicians that were with him playing it was great. Like it was a really cool.
Yeah, it was so good. I think
I particularly liked the
he stayed true to the song all in all, but just having the addition of the orchestra really just brought a whole new element to the song.
Yeah, and the choir and everything was great.
That's right. Yeah, the choir too.
It was cool.
Cool. So I'm glad to hear that you liked both of those. I was just going to comment on the reality tour Rebel version that it is a little different in that it doesn't start with that opening riff. It goes right into the first verse, but I don't know, I kind of dig it. I think it's cool. And of course, the riff comes in, back during the chorus of the song later on, but yeah, I think besides the studio version, that's the best version of that song I've heard, so I'm glad that you feel the same way.
It actually made me want to go back, and maybe I will actually try and do this whenever we get to reality. I haven't seen that in years. I kind of want to see that DVD again, so anyway.
You should, and I was thinking when we get to the last episode, we really should do, because already we've talked about how like Bowie live albums can be hit or miss. Mm-hmm. But I think we should do like a top 5 Bowie live albums to recommend to our audience, and I'll just tell you the reality one would be on my list for sure. But not to get ahead of ourselves, because that's not what we're talking about today. Oh, speaking of homework, really quick, did you also listen to the speaking of Beck's cover of Diamond Dogs?
That I did not do, but it's on my radar. I just didn't get a chance to listen to that one. But I will report back next episode. But I didn't do all my homework. I just did some of it. Which is why I was a straight C student. So anyway.
Fair enough. All right. So let's get into it. We are on the 10th studio album, Station to Station. Let's go. So,
all right.
Station to Station, as I said, for the nth time already, studio album number 10 by the one and only David Bowie, released on RCA Records in 1976. This one is commonly regarded as one of his most significant works. And that's not just me saying that, by the way. Station to Station was the vehicle for his performance, Persona, the Thin White Duke. As a matter of fact, I believe this is the last Bowie persona, if I'm correct. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I believe this is the last one.
That I'm not sure of.
All right. Well, anyways, the album was recorded after he completed the film The Man Who Fell to Earth, which he stars in, and the cover artwork of Station to Station is a still from that film. I believe same for the album cover for Low as well, but I might be wrong, and we'll correct myself on that next episode. But anyways, there's just so much legend surrounding this album, from the heavily dependency on drugs, specifically cocaine, which we've indicated was a thing back during Young Americans and I believe in Diamond Dogs, but this was the record. I mean, Bowie has gone on record saying that he does not remember the sessions for Station to Station. This was peak cocaine for Bowie. Musically, this one's considered as a transitional album for Bowie, developing the funk and soul music that we first heard on Young Americans and kind of dabbled on Diamond Dogs a little bit, but also incorporating this what was considered underground at the time, this German influence, specifically krautrock, with bands like Neu!, Kraftwerk, Can, Tangerine Dream, and several other artists as well. There's also a lot of themes of religion, and you can kind of make the case that these religious themes kind of contradict themselves a little bit with certain tracks. We'll talk about that a little bit. And this record is also really heavy on occultism. Why don't you give us the personnel?
Sure. And there's something I want to ask you about that we didn't talk about off mic. If you think to, I'll try to remember to say it, but if you think about it, remind me that I have something that I want to talk to you about before the end of the episode.
Sounds good.
But I'll try to remember. But anyway, okay, so the personnel. David Bowie on vocals, guitar, tenor and alto sax, mini moog, and mellotron. Carlos Alomar, guitar. Whoa. I'm on Station to Station, sorry. I was looking at Low for a second.
No.
Sorry. So Carlos Alomar on guitar, Roy Bataan on piano and organ, Dennis Davis on drums, George Murray on bass guitar, Warren Peace on backing vocals, who I believe worked with Bowie on some previous stuff.
Warren Peace, fun fact, not to cut you off, is actually what's his name? Jeffrey McCormack.
Yeah, I think we talked about that.
Yep.
The Great Earl Slick on guitar, and Harry Maslin on melodica, synthesizer, and vibraphone.
Awesome. Who also co-produced the record with David Bowie.
Yes.
As mentioned last episode or 2 episodes ago, this was a record that Tony Visconti did not produce, but I do believe, even though it's not under the personnel on the Wikipedia page, I do believe he did do some strings and things like that on this record.
Mm-hmm.
But, all right, awesome. So should we get right into it then?
Go for it. Yeah.
Track by track stuff?
I don't mind letting you lead the show today. This is your favorite album, so.
Oh, I'm just, I'm excited. I'm pumped. All right, so here we go.
Yeah.
Track 1, side 1, we have the behemoth title track, Station to Station. Where do I even begin with this song, first of all? It's a fucking masterpiece. I'll start there. Fun fact, this is the longest recorded studio track by David Bowie.
Okay, now that I didn't know.
This is just shy of being seconds longer than tracks like Width of a Circle, Loving the Alien, and Black Star. But this is the longest studio David Bowie song. Did you say something? I'm sorry.
No, well, I was actually just wondering if, I guess you can't count it because it's 3 separate tracks, but I wonder if it's longer than the Sweet Thing Sweet.
I don't think so. I think the Sweet Thing Sweet clocks in at like 8.5 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
But anyway, that would be up there. That would definitely be up there for sure in terms of some of his longer tracks. But this one, in terms of studio stuff, this is his longest song. Mm-hmm. The best way I can describe this song is it's almost like this prog disco suite, if you will, right? There are elements that I think from a compositional standpoint are like on par with the works of some of his other contemporaries like King Crimson, Genesis, guys like that. But there are some really cool, dare I use the term proto-disco elements? And I say proto-disco because this is like a year before disco really became mainstream. So this song just has so many different genres going on in 10 minutes that it blows my mind.
Yeah, definitely.
The highlight, and I gotta like praise my boy, especially coming off of Mick Ronson, but Earl Slick guitar, on this track, and some of the other tracks on this album too. But man, that riff from the beginning, and even if you listen to some of the live versions of this song, the sort of like steam train that you hear in the beginning, on later live recordings, he uses his guitar for that effect.
Oh, wow.
I'm thinking of a version I heard specifically on the reality tour. I don't think it's on that DVD, but I have listened to a live version of that from that tour, and it's incredible that he's able to get that sound.
Also, the solo at the end was pretty
And
awesome.
that guitar solo at the end, yeah, that too, for sure. Just the guitar playing from start to finish on this track. This one you can definitely really hear the European influence, specifically Kraftwerk. A quote that I came across from Bowie that I think is absolutely valid, and it made me think of some of the other albums in his career, is that there's always one song on a Bowie record that is going to give you an indication of where he's going on the next record. So this album definitely predates, but also foreshadows the Low record as far as I'm concerned. And to give some quick examples of what I mean by that, I think of a track like Rock and Roll With Me off Diamond Dogs, definitely foreshadowed Young Americans, whereas I think a song like Time foreshadowed Diamond Dogs, and I could just keep going on and on. But I just thought that was an interesting quote from the man himself. I think how he specifically worded it was, one track on any given album that will be a fair indicator of the intent of the following album. So I just thought that was an interesting little snippet. But coming off of Young Americans and then hearing a song like this, I think up to this point, this is the best song in his career thus far. I'm not necessarily saying my favorite, although one of my favorites, but I think this is the best song in his career up to this point so far. I want to hear your thoughts, though, on this track.
Okay.
Because I can keep going.
Well, the first thing that I immediately appreciated, as won't be surprising to you at all, is obviously the krautrock influence. I definitely hear, especially in the opening. I love the way that it starts out with those kind of ambient krautrock kind of textures. I hear some Faust in there a little bit. I feel there's some Tangerine Dream in there. Definitely some Kraftwerk and stuff. One thing you didn't touch on that I found definitely, at least in the beginning of this song, is this has got to be like one of, if not his darkest song, up to this point. Just some of the, even like the vocals in the beginning when he talks about the Thin White Duke and everything, just really dark tone to it. And when I was listening to this on headphones, I was like, okay, the first time I listened to this on headphones when I went to re-release or listen to this, I was like, okay, this is what I'm talking about. This is the kind of stuff that I love that Bowie does in his music. But I mean, you said a lot. I mean, I think the way, like you said, you can hear all kinds of different genres in this one song. Like, it kind of sort of midway through the song turns into more of what I wish Young Americans had been, more of that, to use the term that I coined in the last episode, Bowified version of the kind of funk soul sound. It's just done a lot better. And like you said, I think Earl Slick's guitar really highlights that very well, especially like you said with the riff and the solo at the end. But yeah, I just, like you said, it's the song's a trip, man. It's you said it's the longest song in his discography. It also is a testament that it's 10 minutes and it doesn't bore you. It keeps you interested the whole time, and the song constantly changes. I love there's some kind of proggy keyboards there in the beginning of the song. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but it reminded me of like Genesis ELP style keyboards, which is really
definitely
cool mixed in, and that was just thrown in there, and I'm like, wow, this song just goes all over the place. I love it, you know.
Well, you'll appreciate this on the live version on Nassau Coliseum. Tony Kaye is the touring keyboardist, and you kind of hear
great, yeah,
more of that what you were saying, those proggy undertones with the keyboard specifically. But anyways,
yeah, I loved that, and I think if I were to say, it's hard. I'm not gonna say like what my favorite part of the song is, because I mean it kind of takes up the first half of this side of the record, but I do love the beginning. I can't really even say that because I love the whole. I just love the whole way the song flows. I think you might like it a lot more than me, but for me, it's definitely one of his strongest. I would say at least probably top 10 Bowie songs up until this point that of the albums we've reviewed so far, for sure. Awesome track.
Awesome, and just to piggy off what you were saying with like some of the dark stuff, I had mentioned at the top of the episode just some of the like religious themes, like with occultism specifically, and this song is very much like touches on those themes of the Stations of the Cross, which I don't really know a lot about, other than I think isn't that the one with like the 14 or so images.
I think so, yeah.
Of Christ with his crucifix. Yeah, I don't want to get into a whole like religious thing, but I think it's heavily influenced from that. Another thing I thought was interesting about this song that I read about is that, and I'm reading a quote, that it specifically reinstates the traveling metaphor of some of his earlier compositions. So to give you an example of that, the stations at the beginning recall the new surroundings of rock and roll with me, whereas the mountains on mountains reprise the questing motives of wild-eyed boy from Free Cloud and the man who sold the world. So basically, this is sort of like there are several different themes in this song that are sort of sequels to themes that he's touched upon in other songs in his career, which I thought was fascinating, and it makes me want to put a playlist together of those songs now.
Kind of adds more to that Bowie ethos, you know?
For sure, yeah.
One other thing I was going to say as far as influences about how you were saying, there was like a pre-disco and stuff. Also, with especially some of those darker parts in the beginning of the song, I get vibes also of like a proto post-punky goth sound, even just a little bit. Like I could see a lot of, I would imagine I could see a lot of those bands hearing a record like this and kind of picking up on that a little bit. And I don't know, I really like those little dark sections in the beginning.
That's what's so amazing about Bowie, especially when we get to this mid 70s period, is there were bands, as in bands plural, that were created just from specific Bowie albums. I mean, the formation of, like, we wouldn't have Joy Division if it weren't for Low. You know,
Didn't Ian Curtis killed himself listening to, I think, Low or something.
I think so, yeah.
But I'm going to look that up while you go on there.
But the original name of Joy Division, which we shouldn't really be talking about this, getting ahead of ourselves, but the original name for Joy Division was I forget which track off of Low. But like my point is like there were like genres of music that were influenced and created just from specific Bowie records or specific Bowie periods, right? With this one specifically, I've been really into the band Television lately, which they're a late 70s post-punk band, and they had to, like, Marquee Moon, their debut album, had to have been influenced by this song. Had to have. Yeah, I mean, so many of those bands. I think of a band like Bauhaus as well, who did a cover.
Yeah, Bauhaus, yeah.
Bauhaus, thank you, who did a cover of, what Bowie's song was it? It was a Ziggy song. I'm drawing a blank on it. But, like, I could see them, like, being being influenced by this record. So many different artists, for sure. And that's just, like, what's so incredible with a guy like Bowie is that he's influenced so many other artists, right? But the fact that like we can identify a specific period or a specific record that influenced the whole genre, like you can't really say that with too many other artists.
And it's also nice that he's also elevated a lot, and he does this on later albums too, in forthcoming albums, with artists that he was influenced by, like I think probably because of the influence that Kraftwerk, Tangerine Dream, Faust, Can, all those krautrock bands. Harmonium is another big one. Cluster, some of those. I think that because of that, because people realize how much guys like Bowie and especially Eno too were influenced by those bands, it gave those bands more attention too. So it kind of also, he has a way of elevating those that he took from as well,
Yeah, absolutely, because you got to figure, like, this period, David Bowie was mainstream, right? So the fact that he was, he was incorporating these influences of these really obscure artists, and then now they're getting recognition because you've got this guy that's citing them as an influence. That's, it definitely goes both ways for sure.
Side note, I was wrong about Ian Curtis. It was an Iggy Pop record he was listening to before he died.
That's right. I was The Idiot, I think, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Those first two Iggy Pop albums are incredible, by the way. All right, let's move on to track 2.
Golden Years. I'm just going to make this one... Can I just make this one really simple? Because
sure.
I'm just gonna say a very quick piece and I'm done. I always love this song. It's a hit for a reason. It's really catchy. Love the vocals. Just an amazing classic Bowie tune, and I think there's a reason it's a hit. I got nothing else to say. If you don't like Golden Years, I don't know what's wrong with you.
I mean, I would just ditto everything you just said. Yeah, I mean, this song was a hit for a reason. This one definitely is the most Young American-ish song that's on this record. Funny thing about that is, I think maybe other than Win, because I just love that song, it's better than any song off of Young Americans.
Well, it's funny you mention that, and I'll say this because I was going to wait for another song on this, but this along with one other, and maybe you could argue some of Station to Station here, is, and we discussed this in the Young Americans episode, neither of us really had a very high opinion of the record. You might have had a little bit higher of an opinion of it than I did. This is what I'm talking about, where this is the way that the song should have been quote-unquote Bowified, because this kind, like the way that a song like Golden Years or one or two other songs on this album sound, there's that Bowie blend, but you can tell he's honoring the kind of soul funk influence. To me, you maybe add a track like Win and Fascination to this record, you don't even need Young Americans, in my opinion. That's solely my opinion. But like I feel like this was more of a logical step after Diamond Dogs than Young Americans ended up being.
I would 100% agree with that. While I think, this compared to some of the other tracks off this record, yeah, maybe this one's a little simple, if that's even the word you want to use.
Yeah.
Difference being is, like you said, to use your term, Bowified. I can honestly say that this song, to me, when I listen to it, is like, yeah, this is David Bowie doing soul music. It's soul influence. That's what it is. It's soul music, but it's Bowie doing it. Whereas the closest maybe we got to that with Young Americans were maybe tracks like Fascination.
Yeah, Fascination, yes.
Yeah, Win to a degree, even Fame to a degree, but like songs like Somebody Up There Likes Me and Right, those to me were just bland rip-off styles of that time. Whereas Golden Years really is taking that genre and it's him making it his own. He's Bowifying it, to use your term.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, that's how I felt about that when I was listening to this record, and I'll mention that with another track on here too.
And I have a feeling I'm going to agree with you on that other track as well. But we'll get there. interesting enough, two interesting snippets about this song. One, this was going to originally be the title of the record. This record was originally going to be called Golden Years in its early, during the early sessions. And part of that was because this was the first song that was written and recorded. This song, Bowie was actually performing this song during Young Americans.
Okay.
I think that same TV special where Bowie does Can You Hear Me with Cher, he also performs Golden Years. I think it was from that same special. I could be wrong, but it's within that time period. And another thing is actually he had written this song for Elvis. During this time, both David Bowie and Elvis Presley had the same management. And both Elvis and Bowie's managers, were trying to come up with a deal where Bowie would essentially write music or write songs for Elvis, which he was on board for. Like, that would have been like a dream come true for him. But for one reason or another, it just didn't work out, just due to like touring commitments and things like that. But I guess Elvis did write a handwritten note to Bowie saying, hey, good luck on the upcoming tour, something along those lines, which Bowie held on for the rest of his life. So it's cool to know that there was mutual admiration. I know Elvis was a hero for Bowie, and my God, this song is definitely Elvis, like, inspired for sure. Like, Elvis could have definitely recorded this song.
Kind of would have been interesting to hear that,
I would too, right? But it's cool that like the admiration was mutual. It's cool that it's cool to know that, like, the king also kind of admired David Bowie as well. So I thought that was an interesting little snippet as well. But
awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think this song's incredible. Bowie's vocals are amazing, especially some of those high notes that he hit, which apparently I was reading in the Bowie biography that I'm currently reading. Some of those overdubs are not him. It was actually Jeff McCormack or Warren Peace, whichever name you want to use. He did a lot of those vocal overdubs as well. But yeah, man, I mean, this is just a cool song. I think this song, I'm big with sequencing, right? Which, oh, by the way, we let our audience down.
Mm-hmm.
You know what we both didn't do?
Oh, the Young Americans. Yeah, that's okay. We'll have that for a future date.
Yeah, we'll talk about how we're gonna do that maybe after this recording. But anyways, apologies guys for not having that. Where was I going with that? I just lost my own train of thought.
Sequencing.
Yeah, I don't remember. Other than the vocals, I just think are incredible. I think sequencing. So
Yep.
I think the sequencing on this record is incredible. I think this song is just the logical next song coming off of Station to Station. The behemoth of what that song is. To go from that to a song like this, I think just logically makes sense from a sequence point. So that was my only other thing about that. But yeah, I mean, this is, like you said, I mean, this song was a hit for a reason. It meets all of those criterias while he's still making it his own as well.
I agree.
But that's all I got for Golden Years. So let's go ahead, unless if you've got anything.
Nope.
Let's move on to track 3. Word on a Wing. So, I mean, this song's incredible too.
Can I tell a story about this song?
Oh, go for it.
So this song is actually how I first heard this album. You ever watch those VH1 storytellers?
Yep, basically their version of MTV Unplugged.
Right, yeah.
But better, in my opinion.
It was quite a few years back. I think it was like VH1 Classic on. And that came on, and, pretty good performance, It was cool watching, like, with the storytellers. A lot of the artists will tell a story about how they wrote the song and what it's about, whatever. And he did this song. He did Word on a Wing. And I'd never heard it before. And I was like, wow, that's an incredible song. And so, of course, I, immediately went to Wikipedia or something. I was like, where's this song, I found out it was on this record, and obviously I saw Golden Years on here too. So I was like, all right, I got to listen to this album, and that was how I first discovered this album, was through the song Word on a Wing. I'm not sure if you knew that. But yeah, I totally agree. This is honestly an incredible track. Obviously, I think so. Hence, it made me want to listen to the album.
Yeah. So you, I mean, you pretty much summarized. Because I was gonna bring up that particular version of the song as well too. That wasn't my introduction to it. I heard the album version before that particular version, but that VH1 Storytellers is worth checking out. By the way, it is on Spotify. And yeah, I've always enjoyed the VH1 Storytellers because you do get the the storytelling aspect in between songs.
Yeah, I really like it. I mean, not all the performances are the greatest for sure, but it's still kind of an interesting way to look at it. But yeah, Word on a Wing. I mean, there's something about the lyrics that get me, and the piano in this version's gorgeous. I really love the piano in this song, and this and one other track I think are on this album are some of his best vocals. Actually,
I would agree. The piano's incredible. Which, by the way, this is the first record. Without Mike Garson.
Since Aladdin Sane? Since Aladdin Sane?
Since Aladdin Sane. And that's a little interesting to me because the piano specifically on Word on a Wing sounds like Mike Garson's playing to me. But it's not, of course. Yeah, I mean, to just, confirm what you said, when he tells that story on VH1 Storytellers, that's, of course, what the song's about. He was at a point where he, I think, was starting to identify that he was having a cocaine problem. And that song very much is a cry for help. I've read online fans kind of making fun, like poking fun at this song, almost borderline calling it campy, and I don't agree with that at all. I think the emotion and power that's in this track is unlike any song up to this point in his career. His vocal performance in this song, like, it literally sounds like he is crying for help with the way he's singing this song. So I don't get any cheese or campy vibes from this track whatsoever. I get everything but that. So I could never understood why fans critiqued this song from that point of view, but whatever. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, of course. I've always liked the hymn-like nature of this song from the very beginning to, like you mentioned before, the piano, but even to the backing vocals. I'm not sure if that's a choir that's on there. It definitely sounds like it could be one.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, that's so nice.
Yeah. Again, from a sequencing point of view, to my ears, it just makes sense that this would be the next song after Golden Years. So you get the title track, which is this like bombastic thing, nothing like we've never heard before, to Golden Years, which is like the single, but it's fun, it's upbeat, and then you kind of get this, this, I guess it's a ballad, this ballad-like track that is just dark and pretty and just, for me at least, just brings out all of these emotions every time I listen to this song. And when music can do that, I think that's incredible. If music can bring a certain feeling out of you, that just goes to show you how great the song is, right? So I don't know. I just, so far, if this were the record, just these three songs, I would still think it's perfect. But we're only halfway.
I really, it's definitely probably the highlight track for me on the album. I totally agree. I don't understand why people think it's campy. It makes no sense. You can actually, like you said, I really think you could feel the emotion in his delivery on the tune, and instrumentally it's great. And it's, like you said, I think the sequencing up to this point, the first three songs, is just solid. I don't really have much else to say aside from it. I just really love this track.
Yeah, same. And I think we're 100% in agreement. Because like I said, I don't understand the supposed campy element that people get from this song, but whatever.
And what's impressive about this song, and I think probably pretty much all the other tracks on this is that it is one of those songs that, had it not been so well done, it could have potentially been like way too long. It's a 6-minute track. It could have potentially become boring or kind of stale, or just been like, there's a lot of that on the Young Americans album, and there's a couple other tracks in some of his earlier albums where and even we experienced this, especially in the King Crimson discography series. Like, there's sometimes when a track doesn't work, that 6 minutes feels like an eternity, but instead it's like, wow, that was 6 minutes,
Right, yeah, absolutely.
So
I would agree with that. This
done,
does not feel like 6 minutes.
Well. Yeah.
Agreed, yep. And that's a testament to how good the song is. That it could be 6 minutes, but then there can be other songs that are 6 minutes that just, oh my God, let's just end this already.
I know, I totally agree.
All right, so Word on a Wing is the closing track for side 1, which brings us to track 4, or track 1 if you're a vinyl guy, side 2, TVC 15. This song, from a certain point of view, would be the odd one out in the sense of the lyrics. I think the overarching, theme of this album is like existential angst almost, right? Whereas this song is more like surrealism, but like surreal comedy almost. And that's not taking away from my love of this song, because this is another one I love. But I don't know if you know the story behind this song and like what the song's about. But this song's about, this was 1975. Bowie and Iggy were hanging out, I think at Bowie's house or whatever, I don't remember. And they were both, of course, really just high on whatever, probably cocaine. And Iggy is telling a story to Bowie about another time where he did coke, and he swore, he was with his girlfriend, I think, and he swore that he saw his girlfriend coming out of the TV. And that is what TVC 15 is about.
This, I agree with you. This in terms of like the rest of the album, this is sort of the odd man out. I'm just gonna put it this way. This for me is like kind of my Panic in Detroit track. I like the song. I like the song. Now, I by no means do I find this a bad song, but this is one that does get played a bit, and I've heard a lot over the years, and it's just not my favorite. I don't like I like it. I enjoy it when it's on, but I don't go out of my way to listen to it for sure.
Okay.
I kind of like what's going on instrumentally. The lyrics are a little I always kind of thought they were a little hokey, but I enjoy the song well enough. It's, to me, like, and for lack of a better term, because I really feel like this album, much like Diamond Dogs, and I would probably say Aladdin Sane too, doesn't have that problem where there's really any weak tracks. But if I had to pick the weakest track, it'd probably be this one. It would be it would be the low point for me. But I still enjoy it. It doesn't take away from the album at all.
I mean, push comes to shove. If you asked me to pick my least favorite track, it would probably be this one as well. But when, at least in my opinion, when even your least favorite song is still incredible,
exactly.
That really says something.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I wouldn't call it incredible, but I would still say it's a good song, and if that's the worst song on the album, like, again, after I'm sorry to keep crapping on that album, but after coming off of Young Americans, this is like this is, I'd rather listen to the entire album as TCV 15.
Well,
anyway.
that I'm glad to hear, at least. Yeah, I think this would be a good time to talk about two things.
Sure.
One, the original mix of this record versus the Harry Massillon mix. Interesting enough, this song is the only one that I actually prefer the original mix as opposed to the Harry Massillon mix. And that's mainly because of one thing. something that we were really vocal about with the is it pronounced Belay, the Belay brothers, Bewlay brothers?
Yeah, yep.
Thank you. Those chipmunk backing vocals. I don't know what is with the fascination and the chipmunk-esque vocals, but on the Maslin mix, the backing vocals sort of sound more like those chipmunk-esque vocals, which, exactly right, which I could do without. Whereas you don't hear that in the original mix. So the original mix of TVC 1.5 I do prefer. The main reason, and I don't know if you listen to the Maslin mix or not, the main reason why I prefer the Maslin mix is because I think it sounds more well-rounded, right? It's more balanced. I think there are certain things that don't sound as good on the original, so I'm thinking like specifically some of like the lows on the original, whereas I feel like kind of like the highs and the lows are a little bit more balanced on the Maslin mix, and I'm not like one of those, I would not consider myself proficient when it comes to audio, but I can definitely hear if something sounds good or not, and I just think the Maslin mix just sounds better. I love with like the title track, I can hear the feedback in the beginning of the track. It stands out. It's like an instrument of its own for the first 30 seconds, whereas on the original mix, you barely hear it, right?
Yeah, that's why those King Crimson masters are so well done. You really feel like, I totally agree. I'm no audiophile, but like, when you can hear new things in the song that you hadn't heard before, you know that the audio has been balanced properly.
And that's exactly why I love the Maslin mix of this record.
Yeah, and you don't need to be an audiophile to pick stuff like that out. Although I will say the Spotify, the version they had on Spotify, whatever it is, sounded pretty good. But I'll have to try out the Maslin mix.
Okay, yeah, that's on Spotify as well. You should check that out. And the other thing, just related to TVC 1.5, I know it's not so much related to the song, as much, but I was thinking of this when I was listening to this record again this morning. We've talked about already on the show the many people Bowie's collaborated with: Robert Fripp, Brian Eno, Lou Reed, Queen. The list goes on and on, right? Nile Rodgers, Trent Reznor. We can keep going, but if there's one guy I had to, like, if I were to pick one guy amongst all those other guys, it's Iggy Pop. Iggy Pop, and the relationship that Iggy and Bowie had, I think is like one of the coolest rock relationships. I mean, from Bowie being influenced by the Stooges during the glam era, and then him kind of resurrecting the Stooges with Raw Power, to when we get to the Berlin trilogy, when those two just went to Germany to detox, and they recorded Low Heroes, but then Bowie also produced The Idiot and Lust for Life, Iggy Pop's first two solo albums. Those two, I feel like people don't talk about the dynamic of Bowie and Iggy enough. There's always like, oh, Bowie worked with Eno, and there's Mick Ronson, and there's John Lennon. But I think out of all those guys, I think Iggy was like that one guy that Bowie always went back to more than anybody else. And they definitely were there for each other in their careers over the years. I mean, Iggy hit a low point in the 80s, and Bowie would just cover Iggy Pop songs on his albums just so Iggy could receive the royalties. Like, that's how like rock bottom Iggy Pop was, and like it just goes to show you the kind of guy that Bowie was too.
Oh yeah, totally.
So I don't know, that was just my little thing with that. We might talk about that a little more on the Low episode, because again, Iggy Pop was really kind of detrimental during the Berlin period.
Yeah, I
as well.
recall even hearing Iggy Pop talking about krautrock, particularly the band Noi, in a documentary about them or about krautrock, and he alluded a little to him and Bowie being in Germany.
Oh, okay.
Which
Well, there you go.
Interesting.
All right, so I know we got a little off the tracks there. Let's move on to track 5.
Okay.
Stay.
Mm-hmm.
This is another incredible song.
This was my grower.
Is your grower? Okay.
Yeah, this was my grower. I liked it, but the more I listened to this, I was like, wow, I really like this song. And this was also the other song, along with Golden Years, that I was talking about, where this is Bowie properly Bowifying soul and funk music.
Yeah, I had a feeling this was the other song you were referring to.
Yeah.
Could you imagine, like, having... I mean, even though, like, this song should stay on station to station, and I'm glad it's where it is, but could you imagine, like, having this and Fascination on the same record? Like, that...
Oh, it'd be awesome, yeah.
It would be totally awesome, right?
I apologize for completely crapping all over Young Americans. The whole album isn't bad. It's just that it's putting, like... It's like we got a turd wedge between our two favorite Bowie albums, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd go that far. I mean, like, look, if it, like, came down to Young Americans or the first David Bowie album, you better damn well believe I'm gonna run to the hills with Young Americans. So.
Oh, totally agree. But I still say it's the weakest since Space Oddity.
But like Fascination, what I really like about Stay is it's kind of like this funk, soul, hard rock hybrid all in one, right? And I think I pointed this out in the Young Americans episode. Again, as much as you and I both love Mick Ronson.
Oh, the guitar.
The dynamic with Earl Slick and Carl Alomar, who could not be any more opposite in terms of guitar players. Their dynamic is just... It was one of a kind. I mean, you've got Slick's lead on top of Carlos's rhythm playing. Incredible. That riff is one of my favorite riffs of all time, the riff to Stay.
When you had talked, you had mentioned Earl Slick quite a few times in some of the earlier episodes, and I was definitely looking forward to hearing more of his playing, you know, in later albums. I mean, I'm familiar with this album. I used to listen to a lot more back in the day than I have in years, but I'm looking now at his discography. Like, he's on Heathen, Reality, Next Day. Really looking forward to seeing what other stuff, like some other highlights from him, you know.
Yeah, we it's interesting because I think this is the last studio album Earl Slick plays on up till...
I think what I was just looking at, I think it was Heathen, believe it or not.
That's probably right. I know he was in Bowie's touring band in the 90s. Like, I believe he was on the Outside tour, the Earthling tour. But I think you're right. I think Heathen is probably the next studio record he plays on. But I got to see, when I saw that David Bowie Celebration band, he was one of the guys that was there. So getting to see him play Stay and play Station to Station was amazing. Because you got to figure too, like when I was listening to live at NASA Coliseum, I was listening to it and thinking it's kind of strange that when I saw him a few years ago, he was able to do a lot of those guitar effects that he does on this record. But you don't hear it on that live record. And a lot of it is mainly just due to the technology of the time. But I just thought that was interesting that... And Bowie was a guy that was known to play his songs live differently. But still, it was just interesting to me that even like watching the Reality Tour DVD, but even, like I said, seeing him a couple years ago, how the live versions of like these songs were more true to the record than, say, the record that supported, you know, the record that, you know, supported the tour for this album. So, I don't know, I just thought that was interesting. A little fun fact about this song, too, is the chord sequence is pretty much identical to John, I'm Only Dancing Again. I think the only difference is on John, I'm Only Dancing Again. The tempo is a little slower, but other than that, it's the same chord progression. But yeah, I love this song. I don't really know what else to add to it other than, again, the highlight for me is really both Carlos and Earl, as far as I'm concerned, the duality with their guitar playing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, it's a great song.
It's a great song, bottom line. Which also transitions well to our closing track, Wild as the Wind. So, Wild as the Wind was originally written and recorded by Johnny Mathis, who, of course, did the whole soundtrack to the film Wild as the Wind. And then, you have the Nina Simone version, which is, if you haven't listened to the Nina Simone version of Wild as the Wind, you need to check that out. If you haven't, for you specifically, that's your homework for today, by the way.
Well, I haven't, so I'll have to go listen to it.
Nina Simone's been somebody I've really gotten into the past couple of years, but Bowie's version is very much influenced and inspired by the Nina Simone version. And she was someone that he was heavily influenced by. And I had read that he had met her, I think, like a year prior around Young Americans, and was just like an offer, right? And so he again, when he chose to record the song for Station to Station, he really wanted it to be true to her version. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and say this. I know you and I, and maybe myself more, have been very critical with David Bowie covers.
Yes.
Having said that, this is his best cover. In my opinion.
I could agree with that from everything I've heard him do up to this point. I would probably agree with that.
I mean, just from...
I didn't know it was a cover version, but,
yeah.
you know.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, this is not a David Bowie original. Just from the arrangement to this song to Bowie's vocals, especially the very end of the song.
Yeah, I love the vocals in this song.
Like the climax, like the last 2 minutes or so, when he just goes up a register and he just keeps going and going, and then that falsetto at the end. It just, we talked about emotions before, and with Word on a Wing specifically, and I get that when I listen to this song as well. It just brings out certain like levels of emotion that that I'm not even going to get into because we'll be here for another hour. But, yeah, man, I mean, what a way to close the record. I mean, I love the contrast of this closing the record with Station to Station being the opener. Again, I described that song as like this behemoth monster, nothing like we've heard before. And then, while we close the record still on a melancholy note, very stripped down, but very pure sounding as well. I love it. I think this is an incredible way to close the album. What are your thoughts on this song?
I think you kind of summed it up nice. I mean, this was to me, this is the high point on the second part of the album.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was a great way to close it. Like you said, his vocals are the best vocals on the album, in my opinion, on this song.
I would agree with that.
I love the guitar sound. The kind of it's sort of like, I don't know how to describe this song. It's very. He makes it sound very, kind of like on Word of the Wing, but different, but like more personal in a way. The way he delivers it, and I just really like it. It's a really cool way to close the album.
Another homework assignment I have for you, in addition to listening to Nina Simone's version, there's an incredible live version. I think this might have been one of the, like, if not the, no, I guess the David Gilmour concert would be his last live appearance. But prior to that, in 2006, I think it was, for some charity. There is a live version of this song. It's just him and Mike Garson on piano, and it's incredible.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be awesome.
Yeah. And of course
I will definitely have to check that out.
And of course we pointed out already that Mike Garson doesn't play on this album, but
oh, I'm sure he still does an amazing job.
of course, but it's just those two, and it's beautiful. So check that out. That should be on YouTube. But yeah, man. That's Station to Station. Let's do our top 3 tracks, and then we'll do our overall thoughts. No, sure. I'm getting ahead of myself again. Singles really quick. So every song at some point was released as a single. You had in 1975, I pointed out, Golden Years. He was already performing that song. It was actually already recorded, and he had released that as a single in 75 with Can You Hear Me being the B-side. You've got an edited version of Station to Station that was released as a single, which I need to listen to because I'm curious as to how much of that was edited. But it's like 3.5 minutes. Station to Station's the A-side with TBC 15 being the B-side. TBC 15 was also released as a single on the A-side with I love when I write abbreviations and then I can't figure out what the abbreviation is. Oh, We Are the Dead. We talked about this on the Diamond Dogs episode.
Yep.
We Are the Dead was the B-side for that. Stay was also released as a single with Word on a Wing being the B-side. And then Wild as the Wind was released later on as a single when the compilation album Changes Bowie was released, which that came out in 1981. And Wild as the Wind was one of the singles for that. So let's do this. Let's do our top 3 songs, final thoughts, and we'll spend a minute talking about Nassau Coliseum, and then we'll call it a wrap.
If you want to just sum up that, I will admit that I didn't get a chance to listen to it. So
you son of a bitch.
Yeah, I suck.
All right, that's okay.
So my top 3. My top 3 would be the first 3 tracks, to be honest. I don't know what... I think Station to Station, the title track, would be my favorite. Okay. Then I'm having a hard... If I'm going to be honest with myself, I think I'd probably have to go Golden Years. As much as I love Word on a Wing, I don't want to... Those are the top 3. I don't know which number 2 and number 3 is, but Station to Station is definitely number 1.
Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I will say... No, I'll get to that when I get to my final thoughts. Go ahead.
So, more than any other album that we've discussed on this podcast thus far, including King Crimson, hands down the hardest tracks to rank. But I think I can do it. For me, the title track would be my favorite as well. Station to Station. It is one of my top 10 favorite David Bowie songs. So definitely my favorite off this record. Mm-hmm. Then for me, as great as Golden Years and Stay are, I have to do Wild as the Wind as my second favorite, and then Word on the Wing being my 2 favorites. So I hate incorporating both of the ballads, but I just love both of those tracks.
Hey, I don't blame you. The Wild as the Wind would have been right there too. It's just that for me, it's like Golden Year's such a classic. It's hard not to put on there, and I do love Word on the Wing. But
yeah, I totally get it.
The other 3 tracks are still really great, and I think, as we've talked about, this whole album is just solid. You know, I mean, it's your favorite Bowie album, so of course your opinion of it's going to be bigger than mine. But and by bigger I mean just you're more enthusiastic about it. But I still say that there isn't a weak track on this album. The highs are really, really high, and the lows are still really good. So the only thing I would say is this album I don't think suffers from the whole issue that an album like, say, Hunky Dory or Ziggy Stardust has, where I've thought where the second half of the album is weaker. I don't think that. Let me rephrase that. I don't think the second half of the album is weak. I just think that the first half of the album is so strong that I think specifically with TVC 15, you're talking like by a hair, but I think TVC 15 is probably the weak point, and then Stay gets better, and Wild as the Wind is the best song on the third track. So it kind of like to me it's like the album dips very slightly and then just comes back, but it doesn't. It's not, like I said, something like a few other albums I can mention where the second side is clearly way, or the first side is far superior to the second side, which is a weird thing thinking about too. That's kind of a thing with Bowie, with some Bowie albums.
Yeah, I mean, at least so far, right?
Yeah, it's weird.
So let me. Would that be your final thoughts on the record, or do you have anything else to add to it?
Overall, really great. I'd say it'd have to be top 3 or 4 of the albums that we've listened to so far for me.
Okay, so top 3 so far, but folks, that doesn't mean that's going to be in his top 3 overall, because we got a ways to go.
A long way to go.
Okay, awesome. So, I mean, look, if I haven't made it clear enough already, it's my favorite Bowie record. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. I would, with confidence, say it's in my top 10 favorite albums. I can confidently, go that far. It's a 10 out of 10 album. Like I said, at the beginning of the episode, I feel it's a perfect album. I really don't think there are any flaws. Other than maybe the Maslin mix of TVC 15, there are elements I don't care for, but not enough to, diminish the song for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's perfectly sequenced. I think, like you said, I think this is what Young Americans should have been, and maybe there's a case to be made that we needed Young Americans in order to get this album, because this album really is the Bowified version of the music that was popular of that time. The fact that bands were pretty much created because of this one record alone, I think just signifies the importance of this album. And I was thinking this the other day. It's amazing to me. Like, look, if Bowie's career was just Hunky Dory, Ziggy Stardust, Aladdin Sane, and Diamond Dogs, and that was it, Diamond Dogs was the last record, he would still be a legend, right? We would still be talking about him now. But at least for me, the fact that, there's still greatness to come just goes to show you how incredible he is. To me, this is where my Bowie starts. I know you lean more towards those albums I just mentioned, but we're getting to my Bowie territory now. While still fully acknowledging that I love all 4 of those other records I just mentioned before. But the fact that, for me, this, we're just getting started, it just goes to show you how incredible he is.
He's one of those guys that just has a crazy amount of good albums,
Yeah. Bottom line, right?
And just kept reinventing the wheel and doing a really, and making a big impact. So it says a lot about him. Yeah,
definitely. So guys, before we wrap up, and I want to apologize. I'm sorry if I feel like we're kind of cheating you in the sense when we hype up that we're going to talk about a certain live record, but we don't really deep dive it enough. I mean, that mostly is intentional, but at the same time, I'm just going to be honest, it's something I would talk about more if I'm really into it. And this is another Bowie live album, live at Nassau Coliseum, 1976. I just think it's okay. This one, interesting enough, was heavily bootlegged for many, many years. I once had a bootleg copy of this, back during the Pirate Bay days, before it received its official release, which I think this came with the 2010 re-release. Yes, the 2010 re-release of Station to Station. So this was the sort of the bonus discs, if you will. And I would have gotten that probably again around 2012, 2013 circa. So just a couple years after that. Remaster came out. And yeah, it's okay. That's all I really have to say. You know, again, we got to keep in mind that this was peak cocaine period for Bowie, and you very much hear that on the live performances. I'll just give a couple, highlights, I guess. The live version of Station to Station is pretty cool. It's not my favorite version of Station to Station live. There are definitely better ones that we will be talking about on some subsequent episodes. I'm thinking specifically of the Blackout version. I'm thinking specifically of this, what is it called? The Serious Moonlight Tour. I actually really like that version. But I will say what I do like about this version that you do hear in pretty much any live rendition of Station to Station is I like that he ends, he does a reprise of the first verse of the song, the Return of the Thin White Duke. Like, he ends it that way. And I wish he had done that on the original recorded version. I don't know. I always just thought that was a cool way to end it. That's something he would go to do later on in Black Star. When we talk about that, structurally, Black Star is very similar to Station. But yeah, I thought that was cool. The live version of Fame is pretty cool, actually. The live version of Word on a Wing is great. He does a cover of Waiting for the Man by the Velvet Underground. That's a good cover. I love the live version of Queen Bitch. This is one of the highlights off this record. It's the live version of Queen Bitch. On the second disc... Yeah, the second disc. While there's a dip in the audio quality for some reason with these next two tracks, I really like these live versions of Life on Mars and 5 Years. It's sort of like a medley because he only does about 2 minutes of Life on Mars, but he hits this falsetto that you don't hear on the original version, and then it goes into like a slower version of 5 Years, and I don't know, I think it's pretty cool. But you definitely hear a difference in terms of the sound quality. Panic in Detroit, whatever. The version of Changes is cool too. TVC 15 is great live. This version of Diamond Dogs is okay. Same thing with Rebel. It's okay. And yeah, honestly, the same thing with the Gene Genie, which is the closing track. It's just okay. So, I mean, is it worth checking out? Sure. But it's just an okay live album.
Or probably not.
I would not consider it essential. No. If when we go to do our top 5 Bowie live albums, you will not find this one in my top 5. But having said that, the version of Station to Station, Word on a Wing, Stay, Queen Bitch, Life on Mars, and 5 Years, I would say are worth checking out. But beyond that, that's really all you need as far as this live record goes.
Cool.
But we did it. That's it, guys.
We did it. Station to Station.
We have officially covered both Rob's favorite Bowie record and my favorite Bowie record, and we still have a ways to go. But I got to tell you, we've got the Berlin trilogy next.
I'm really excited about the Berlin trilogy. I really am.
So I can't wait to hear your thoughts on all 3 of these records. I think I mentioned this in the Young Americans episode. Station to Station's my favorite, but Low is my second favorite Bowie record.
Low is a great album. It's one of my favorites too. So this should be very interesting. Heroes, I'm not as familiar with as Low, and then Lodger will be a completely new, experience for more. So
Lodger. I love Lodger.
This should be very, very interesting. I'm very excited.
Lodger was that was my grower for me, and even it's been a long time already since that record grew on me, but that was the one for the longest time where I was but that album you just need to give it time. I can't wait.
I'll have to make sure I start listening to that more, maybe even when we're on Heroes. I'm gonna just say, to wrap us up here real quick, the next Bowie episode won't be up for a little while. There's some life stuff going on, particularly with Andrew moving and me working soon, or working full time again. But it probably, what I'd say, next one will be like maybe say like a month or so. But
I think that's fair to say. Between recording and editing, I would say that's fair. And by the way, guys, not to cut you off, Rob, I do want to apologize for the I guess long time gaps with some of the last few episodes. Life's just been a little crazy. We really thought when
too, so.
But it's totally fine. We just want to be clear that we love doing this podcast, but at the end of the day, it's like we are on our schedule. So I apologize that if we haven't been consistent for you guys. But just keep in mind that this is something that we do for fun. That, not to say that we hope goes in a more serious direction down the road, but we really are on our schedules at the end of the day. And we thought that COVID was gonna give us some more time, and it actually kind of turns out that it didn't, and that's fine. If you're at the time of this recording, Young Americans was just posted yesterday. So
so it's hopefully be up to. Hopefully that was 2 weeks ago by the time you're listening to this.
But with that being said, while Low probably won't be up for another month, we do have 2 other things that will be up in between that I don't know if I want to spoil at this time.
Well, let's just say that there's going to be 2 hopefully shorter podcasts, 2 different ideas, different from each other, different from anything that we've done so far, but we finally want to start exercising some of our other ideas, and hopefully making it a little easier on ourselves too, because it won't require a lot of prep, and hopefully it'll be pretty quick. So
definitely. So
we're hoping we could bring some exciting new stuff to you.
Yes, and that is the plan, and we've been saying that for quite a while now, and definitely expect both of those things to be up in between station to station and Low. So exciting stuff.
And with that, I have 2 more things I want to say very quickly, and then let's end this, because it's time for me to eat dinner.
Samesies.
So first of all, the thing that I was going to mention to you, that I was like, hey, if you think to remind me of this,
which I did,
episode,
so thank you for remembering.
That's okay. I want to propose on air here an idea that just kind of came to me when we were talking about this, particularly when we were talking about the first track of this album. I would love to, if you're down, doing some kind of post-Berlin trilogy krautrock podcast, because we've talked about krautrock a bunch. I love krautrock dearly, and it's such an important genre from this record until, I would even argue, maybe even some Scary Monsters. That I feel like we'd be doing an injustice to people who don't, who aren't really familiar with the genre, but maybe like Bowie, or maybe are just curious about hey, they always talk about krautrock. What is this? I would love to do an episode of I don't know, even if we just discuss some of our favorite bands, albums, whatever. But I would love to do that with you if you'd like to.
I am totally down for that.
Okay, awesome. So expect that sometime, maybe post Berlin trilogy. That could be our little break between Scary Monsters or something. I don't know. And the last thing is, despite all the stuff we said before about getting stuff up on not being consistent with schedules, getting videos up, blah blah blah, I have noticed that our views have been going up and up, particularly on the different streaming platforms. We are now at a total of I think over 200 views on all the streaming platforms. So thanks everybody who's been checking us out and listening. We really appreciate that. So despite there being a few gaps, we are starting to get a bit of an audience. So yeah, just thanks. It's it makes us, all the effort we're putting into this, worth it. So
it really does, because even though, like I said, we do this for fun, it's obviously, it's validating that,
of course,
there is an audience out there that's listens to us 2 schmucks talk about music, and that's great. So that is our motivation to continue this and to continue to make this better. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much, everybody.
That's news to me, by the way. So because you do more of that stuff than I do. So
well, it's a lot of effort on both of our parts. But with that, guys, we're out of here. we will see you next time.
Next time. Bye, guys.
Peace.